Hi, I'm Josh McGrath,
I'm Andrew Haas.
and this is the Art and Pursuit Podcast. Welcome back. Today's episode is titled, Dating is Rigged Against You. Over the last 7 episodes, we've explored some practical topics with regards to once you're in a relationship, some of the pitfalls and mistakes that men tend to make, and trying to really equip you men to avoid those in your dating relationship. Today, we're going to talk about the fact that the dating game, kind of what is the modern dating landscape and what culture says you should do, is designed ultimately not for your success, but really for your failure. And this is going to be, again, a controversial topic similar to last week's topic. And I want to encourage you to really come at this with an open perspective, because what we're going to explore is not just our own ideas. It's actually derived from studies, from stats, from stories that we have seen and heard and explored over the last several months. So, Andrew, let's jump in here. Over the last several months as we've been posting content, we've had a lot of people, whether it's comments online or, maybe, conversation we've had with people, they think that some of the things we say are absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
And the reality is, yes, it is true. But the reason why we've been talking about all the different things for the last, 27 episodes, is because the dating game, the modern dating game, is broken. And so we're not just recommending some rule changes for the dating game. We're actually recommending a completely different game altogether in a completely different arena. We're not saying people continue doing what is being done, just slightly different. We're saying what's being done isn't working at all. Get out of the arena, get out of that game and start something brand new.
I think there's a good parallel with, our diets in this country, at least. We're just a mess as a culture, health-wise. And, we don't just, to get healthier, you don't just say, well, cut back on the Doritos, or, try to scale back on this, or maybe stop drinking soda.
Sure.
Yeah, sure, good ideas. But it's like the whole sphere, the whole arena is like, when you're engaged in that, it's like you can't win. Sometimes to have good results, you've got to completely change how you approach something.
The paradigm by which we approach relationships today is just not compatible with the world that we live in. And so instead of being like, well, let's just make some slight changes, there actually needs to be a fundamental disruption to the way that we view and approach relationships.
In the past, say 60 or 70 years, culture and society have changed popular thinking to change how we think about relationships. And, collectively, we rarely come to a better version of what we want. And you can think of, just going back, say, 30 years in the computer industry, computers are boring, mostly utilitarian. Apple comes along and changes up what a computer is and what it looks like. Arguably a better version of what a computer is. And then more recently with smartphones, every smartphone, there was no common definition of what a smartphone was. They were kind of all over the board and they didn't really work that well. And then, Apple again kind of breaks away from the herd.
I mean, not that we're huge Apple fans or anything here.
Well, if you do something well, just own it. And then, the iPhone decided to break away from the norm, establish something better. And so, Airbnb did the same thing with, the hotel market.
Yep.
Arguably, it's something better. What didn't happen was a collective group, the industry as a whole didn't arrive at these decisions. And so what we're saying with dating, it actually might take something similar where, if you just take on the collective thinking of what culture is saying, you're not going to get to a better outcome. It's going to take a mindset of this, no one else might be doing this, but I want a better outcome. And so I'm going to give it a shot.
That's a really good point. Essentially, this idea of market disruption. And I think we're beginning to see the early stages of that, really across the Western world. It's very prevalent on social media, and studies are beginning to reflect, I think, the early recognition that there needs to be a massive change. And, society is not interested in you doing things that will lead towards your happiness and fulfillment. By and large, society's interested in selling you a product or an experience that makes you believe that with that product or experience, I will be happy. And so really, you, the consumer, are the product. And so when it comes to like dating relationships, just some things that come to mind. The gift industry, a multi-billion-dollar industry where for their success, they want you to believe you need to buy, this gift or that gift, this piece of jewelry or that piece of jewelry in order for your dating relationship to be, fulfilling, for it to really represent your love for one another. Hollywood, there's a reason Hallmark movies exist. If everyone's experience in life was one of holistic, healthy, functional families where we are all finding, true love and starting our own families together, Hallmark wouldn't exist because you're not making movies about what everyone's experience is. The reason why Hallmark is successful is because it paints an idyllic picture of health and wholeness by and large that people long for in their own lives. I think about the book industry and magazines. Not to get controversial here, but we've got 50 Shades of Grey, a very famous book that came out, in the early 2000s, maybe 2010s. I don't know. I never read it. Praise God. It's
not recommended.
Not recommended. It sold 68 million copies worldwide, and 80% of the purchasers were women. Again, selling them an experience, arguably a very dysfunctional, broken experience of a relationship. The movie made nearly $500 million. I mean, that is insane. And so what we have is a culture that's trying to sell you on something that if you do this, if you buy this, you'll feel more fulfilled, you'll feel more content. I mean, think about the number of men out there who pressure women to have sex before marriage. And it's like this idea of if you have sex, you'll be more fulfilled in your dating relationship. But at the end of the day, you as the individual aren't benefiting by and large. It's other industries, it's other people that are benefiting.
So I think the gambling industry is a good parallel. There are a lot of people that gamble. You could arguably say there are a lot of winners even. But in total, of the number of people that visit casinos and buy lottery tickets, there are a lot of losers.
Yeah.
Right. Orders of magnitude more.
Yeah.
And so the people that gamble and win could say, well, it worked for me. And it does work for a very small number of people. That doesn't mean on the whole, if you're out to go earn some money, gambling is not the place you go.
Exactly. and so much of the modern dating scene, kind of what is recommended to people is like gambling. It's like, well, go out and they'll prop up some success stories and say, because it has worked. And we're not arguing that the modern dating culture doesn't lead to some success for some people. But the reality is those are the outliers. Those are the exceptions. Yeah. And people should not assume they're the exception to the rule. You should never go into a casino assuming you're the exception to the other 500,000 people that have gone through that casino in the last week, and you're the one who's going to win.
Modern dating does work for a very small number of people, relatively speaking, and it does not work for way, way more.
And much like gambling, most people leave that experience frustrated, angry, bitter, annoyed, poor.
Yes.
And then the irony is
They'll go
right back into it, thinking that somehow, well, this time it's going to be different. I mean, isn't that the definition of insanity? Trying the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And that is what the modern dating landscape is. It's this idea and this notion that if you keep trying it, at some point you'll, quote, find your person. At some point you will find true love. At some point you'll be married. And it's like, well, maybe, but for the vast majority of people, that is not their experience. And we need to disrupt that process in order to equip people with a new game and a new arena where they can be successful.
If you want to get healthy, if you're carrying too much weight or you're not sleeping well or you've got some health conditions, it's like, yeah, you sometimes need to make big decisions. You'll need to change how you grocery shop, how you cook your food, where you eat, how often you eat, what time of day. There might be big decisions to make if you actually want to have a good outcome.
And the irony is that, if you're trying to eat healthy, but none of your friends are healthy eaters, and the way that you guys spend time together is, going out to the bar, fast food, getting ice cream, it can be very difficult. You can feel very isolated and ostracized and awkward because, like, oh, well, I'm the guy who's going to go out with you, but I'm not going to eat, with you guys. I'm not going to drink with you guys. So I'll just sit here quietly while you guys enjoy the good food, while you guys enjoy the good drink. Mm-hmm. And very quickly, you can feel the pressure to be like, I guess it doesn't really matter. I guess I'll just join back in.
Big deal.
And in the same way, within the dating landscape today, if someone wants to try something that's very different and disrupt what culture recommends, it can feel really awkward. You will probably be labeled weird. People will look at you strangely. And for most people, that's not something they want.
Yeah.
And so they'll oftentimes end up just kind of settling for the status quo. They'll date perpetually. They'll be unhappy in the relationships. They'll date for years upon years without any plans or intentions towards marriage. They'll end up angry, bitter, frustrated, alone, depressed, isolated. They'll have less money, less opportunities. They won't have invested in things that would have produced a great harvest in the future. And all because they want to fit in. And there's this great quote by Thomas Jefferson. He says, if you want something you've never had, you must be willing to do something you've never done.
Yeah, so true.
And all these people are saying, no, I want true love. I want to find my person. I hate that statement. I'm like, so dumb. But like, yes, you want to find true love. You want to find your person. You want to be married. You want to start a family. Great. Those are all good things. But if you want those, maybe try something that isn't being done. Reject what culture is offering because that's not going to benefit you. The modern dating landscape, the modern dating game is rigged against you. It's not set up or designed for your success.
And for so many people that feel like they're failing at dating, it's because the system or the game that they are engaging with is broken and you could say set up for their failure. And what people need to try to understand, what guys need to really dig into is, okay, what has changed? What am I engaging with that, is like, what is the brokenness that I'm trying to engage with? Stop doing that and figure out, okay, what do I need to change or where should I reorient myself in order to have a better outcome?
That's actually a really great setup for a video that I want to show here. It's titled, How Couples Met from 1930 to 2024. It's making the rounds on social media right now. And it's really interesting because it explores, about 8 different areas. And then they kind of just follow statistically through each decade how those change. And for anybody who's listening, I encourage you to go Google it, watch it, it's 1 minute, and then come back because as we talk about it, it will make a lot more sense. But let's go ahead and play that video now. So crazy stats there.
Yeah.
I want to take a look at some of them here. In 1930, how couples met. 22% met through family. 22% met through school.
Almost a quarter
Yep.
each, yeah.
18% met through friends. 11% met through neighbors. 10% met through church. And then 8% met through a bar and restaurant. So those are the top ones there. And what's so interesting is when you look at those, particularly, family, school, friends, neighbors, church, those are all relational environments.
Right.
Culturally, we were much more relational. We were much more present with one another back in the day. So it makes sense that those would all be the top ways that couples met.
So if we look at 2024, we have 60% of couples, almost 2/3, are meeting online, 14% through friends, and 8% through coworkers, 5% at bars and restaurants. What's interesting is that, family, school, and church are all in the single digits.
Yeah, neighbors, 1%. That's dropped 10% from 1930. And when you look at the 1930 stats, 22% family, 22% school, 18% friends. That's 64% of couples met, through those meets. Whereas in 2024, 60% of couples are meeting online. So almost 2/3 in both cases are meeting each other through very dramatically different means. One through relationships and one online. And, in 1930, 17% of marriages ended in divorce. And in 2024, 40% of marriages are going to end in divorce. And we wonder why so many marriages today are ending in divorce. Well, one of the major reasons, because the way that we're meeting each other is not through an organic relational environment. It's through a contrived, artificial environment where there's this pressure to romanticize her, all for the sake of what? To be able to date and experience sex with no plans of covenant or commitment?
Yeah.
It's like, of course marriages are going to end in divorce.
Yeah, so the way that people used to meet, it wouldn't necessarily guarantee success, but on the whole, it did produce a better outcome. And, having this almost complete flip to online dating, where what do you have to go on? You have looks and you have common interests, which there's been a false equivalency to compatibility.
Yep.
And you expect a good outcome when looks have never determined the success of a relationship. And common interests, I would say, have very little correlation, if any, to the success of a relationship.
And part of the disruption that we're encouraging men to engage with is to do the weird thing. Go to your friends, go to your family, go to your local church, go to your neighbors and ask them if there's anybody that you should be pursuing. Over the last year, I've had, I think, probably 3 different people approach me, which I'm so thankful for, who have come to me and they have presented, an individual that they think I should consider pursuing. And they've done it in such great, loving, caring, kind ways. And each individual I didn't know at all. And so they were, either family members that aren't in the area or friends that aren't in the area. And they were like, hey, I just want to present this to you for your consideration. And I really appreciate that there's some people who are really looking out for me. And I've had other men come to me and ask me, hey, is there anybody that you think I should be pursuing right now? I love that. Again, some of our listeners are going to freak out and flip out. Like some of the beta males are going to get on there and become keyboard warriors, leaving a bunch of comments that demonstrate just how low T they have. But what we're dealing with here is very much a shift in perspective on how one goes about looking to pursue a romantic relationship.
And something that we want to be clear on is that we're not saying that you go to these people in your life for them to make the decision for you. This isn't about offloading the decision making to a group of people or your peers or your mentor. These people aren't in your life to make decisions for you. Hey, date this person or do this or do that. They're simply there to provide input where you ultimately got to make the decision. But you want to make an informed decision and you want to increase the chances of making a good decision. And we know that making decisions on our own will have a much higher chance of being a poor decision. And so by involving other people, we aren't saying have them make the decision for you. We're simply saying get good info, get input from smart people, from wise people, from people that know you, and use that so that you can make a good decision.
It's true. And at the end of the day, kind of what we've been advocating since our first episode is do the unpopular thing. Because unfortunately, the popular thing, the dating game of 2024 is going to be rigged against you by and large. And again, we're going to have men who are not going to like what we're going to say. They're going to be frustrated and annoyed that we're challenging them to be men of commitment, to be men of purpose, to be men of respect and honor. That's going to really bother them. And on the flip side, we actually will have some women who will be annoyed because they want to be romanticized and wooed rather than pursued. Unfortunately, for a lot of women, culture has sold them the lie that they should be pursuing the environment of romance rather than the direction of marriage. And on the flip side, you'll actually have women who unfortunately have really bought into a cultural lie that says you need to be romanticized and wooed rather than pursued. They bought into this notion that it's about experience, the romanticization of the dating phase, romantic love, rather than the pursuit of covenant and marriage. And so you're going to get people on both sides who are going to be unhappy with what we're saying. But at the end of the day, for anybody who's listening, who is unhappy, who's frustrated, who has not found success with kind of the cultural recommendations, we're saying try something different. Be the disruption.
Yeah, a lot of people might not like what we're saying, but look at the alternative of what culture is saying, and it's not working. So it's at least worth it to give it a try.
And yes, there's actually another video we're going to play that I stumbled across on social media that really highlights, a lot of the things that we've been talking about. And the video itself, what's discussed in it is a bit of a disruption compared to the cultural norm of today. So let's give this one a watch.
I think men know, and you tell me if I'm wrong, I think men know if they want to marry you at 6 months.
Maybe sooner.
I think they...
Do you think a guy knows within 6 months if he's going to marry the girl?
Yeah,
Do you think he knows within 3 months?
most likely.
Do you think he knows within 2 months?
No.
So 2 months? No, so 3 months is a number. 3 months. Give him 3 months, and that's it.
3 months. Yeah. I love it. So again, controversial. Culture says date for 8, 10, 50 years. And here we've got a young couple. And I love the guy. He's very honest. And he's not wrong.
No.
In the vast majority of cases, men will know within 3 months of dating whether they want to marry the woman or not.
For the vast majority of men, yes, you will know. Again, making some assumptions. You live in the same area, you're regular contact. There will be edge cases, and we're not talking about
Of
this.
course.
But for the vast majority of men who are in regular contact with someone they're interested in, you will know, or you should know, within 3 months. Personally, I would say 2 months is enough time, but be generous and say 3.
So then here's the question. If a man knows at 3 months, why does he date for 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, 8 years before proposing?
Because the girl goes along with it.
Come on, say it to the women in the back.
And I'm not going to say women are at fault, because I don't think they are completely. They do play a role. Men certainly play a role, right? They're both people.
Sure.
But women are too willing. You could call it lowering their standard.
Yep.
And they're too willing to go along with a guy dragging his feet.
And, it's like two ships passing in the night. Women have been told that a guy who's intentional, that's weird, that's too intense, that's freaky, like slow down, take your time. And so they oftentimes will run away from him. And so guys have heard this, they've maybe seen it on social media. And so they believe that they need to take their time. But there's a study that was done recently that found that women are twice as likely as men to end a relationship after a year if marriage is not on the horizon. And so many women actually are not interested in being in a relationship for 2, 4, 6, or 8 years. They're in that relationship because they think he needs that time to man up and propose. Meanwhile, he's thinking, I need to take my time because if I'm too intentional, I'm going to freak her out. And it's like two ships completely passing each other in the night. And so instead of making an investment in marriage and in your future, you're just stuck perpetually dating each other until one of you finally hijacks it out of there.
Yeah. And you know, people will say, how can you really know somebody in 3 months? How can you really know if they're the one? And there isn't the one. So
Come on,
we can just
there is not.
get rid of that notion.
Yes. If you believe that, you're an idiot.
Yes.
Stop.
Yes.
You're now already smarter for hearing that.
There is the kind, so find the kind of person you're interested in.
Yes.
There isn't the one, but also, at the end of the day, it's a commitment. It's just a choice.
Yep.
You're either going to choose to love this person, to act in their best interest, and you're going to make the choice to commit to them, or you're not.
Yeah.
At some point, there isn't this certain point you get to where it becomes abundantly clear that they are the one for you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they are, broken, messed up people, and as are you, and it's just a decision you make.
And another interesting study that Morgan Stanley did found that by 2030, 45% of women aged 25 to 44 will be single and childless.
Wow.
And that's a symptom of a problem, much like that 63% of men aged 18 to 30 are single and in no relationship today. That is symptomatic of a bigger problem.
Yeah.
Now, that problem is not just one isolated thing. It's multifaceted. And we can't unpack all of that. But one of the things that we're trying to do today is to help our listeners recognize that culture is not interested in solving that problem. Culture is merely contributing to that problem. So if you want to disrupt and not be one of those numbers, you've got to do something different than what culture is recommending.
Culture is not only not suggesting a solution, culture likes to promote something that might make it difficult to actually end up in a successful relationship. They like to promote the feeling, the in the moment, low work. Do something that's easy, do something that just makes you feel good. And all of these, when you add them all together, it actually is the opposite of what's going to help you get to a better outcome.
It's true. I would posit that most of our listeners, and probably most people, don't actually like dating. They want to find, love, but they don't want to date to find it. And I bet that if our listeners could snap their fingers and go from single to in marriage with somebody that they're deeply in love with and who deeply loves them, and they could just skip that entire dating phase, I bet you most, if not all of them, would do that. Because the dating phase is a means to an end.
Right.
And there was a video that I watched recently of a woman on a podcast, and she was talking about how she wants a boyfriend, but she doesn't want to have to date. And
It's like the definition of a boyfriend.
exactly. And everyone started laughing. And so she began to explain that, the process by which to find a boyfriend, going out on all these, first dates and, dolling yourself up and having all those surfacey conversations over and over and over and over again, she was just done with it. She was exhausted with it. She was like, I don't have the time or energy to keep repeating that process. I want a boyfriend. I don't even want to be in the committed stage of a relationship. And I think that for a lot of people who have found frustrations with dating, they too want to avoid all the first dates and the surfacey get to know you conversations. I mean, how many times can you ask, what do you do? Well, tell me about your background. Tell me about your family. Before you're eventually just like, can we just stop with the formalities here? Do you want to be in a relationship with me?
Right.
Like, answer that question. But we have to play this game culturally where it's like, get to know you and I kind of like you, but I don't really like you and I can't admit that I like you until I know that you like me, and you're not going to say you like me until we've been on enough dates and spent enough time doing this together. And it's so drama filled, so time consuming.
Yeah.
And for most people, it's not leading to happy or healthy outcomes.
And part of the problem too is that I think men are not able to really evaluate the situation because they probably don't have good info to go on. Knowing where she works or what town she grew up in or what school she went to or what instruments she plays or, what pet she has or where she, all these things. It was like, yeah, those are interesting things, but they don't really help you get to a point where you can say, okay, can I marry this person? But that's kind of where we are culturally. We're at this, when people go on a date, you kind of exchange things that might be interesting and might make for good conversation.
Yeah.
But part of the problem is that that actually doesn't help the long-term game.
Yep. And if you dive into too serious a conversation, you're too intense. You're a creeper. And it's like, okay, so I need to show that I'm interested and have surface level conversations with you, but you're tired of having surface level conversations and just want to get to the commitment part. But if I ask questions that allow me to commit to you, I'm too intense and I'm a creeper. Again, two ships passing in the night. And it's no wonder we have so many people that are disillusioned with the modern dating scene. Again, get out of the current game. The current game is rigged against you. It's not set up for your success.
Yep.
Do something different. When I think about how the dating phase historically was a hurdle that men had to overcome in order to achieve the prize, which was winning the woman over and making her their wife. But today, we've made the prize, the dating phase, and the hurdle commitment. It's like people are like,
Backwards.
It's so backwards. Because if you're like intentionally committed and purposeful in that commitment, that's weird. That's too intense. You're moving too fast. It's like you get rejected for that.
Yeah.
But it's all about the dating phase and the experience of dating rather than about the prize of commitment.
That's an interesting point that we actually have flipped it around where there should be some level of work up front.
Of course.
With the dating.
Absolutely.
Of course, time and again, that's going to get old and that's going to wear you out. But if you put the work in up front, that should help you set you on a path where in the future things are going to go more smoothly. But we've totally flipped it around where we kind of like rest in this dating. Oh, we're just dating and commitment. That's a lot of work. And I'll think about that someday. But it's like, hold on, let's flip that. Let's do the hard work early, figure out, is this person, are we compatible? And the future idea of commitment is going to be much less daunting.
And if you're dating someone that you don't want to marry, that you don't plan on marrying, why would you ever begin a process where from the outset you're like, I don't plan on marrying her and I don't plan on getting married?
Yeah.
What a waste of time and investment. I heard someone say it this way. They said you can either date smart or marry stupid.
Right.
And so much of the cultural dating landscape today is very much that. It's like if you do try to date smart, you're ostracized, you're labeled weird. The beta males are going to come out and leave comments on YouTube.
Yeah.
But then people are marrying stupid and they're having a terrible experience and they go online, they go on TikTok and they talk about how miserable marriage is and they disparage marriage. And the issue that they have is the institution of marriage. Somehow that's the problem. But in reality, they're the problem and that they were the problem well before they were ever married.
People could say that we're just spouting a bunch of opinions and hot air. And okay, could be true.
Sure.
And then what's the alternative?
Yeah.
Try it like things have been going, and where does that lead you?
And I think that's actually a great place to end. So as we conclude here, the first thing is for all of our listeners, men and women, recognize that the dating game is rigged against your success. So if you're like, I'm just going to keep trying to do what culture says, don't. Maybe you'll find success, but don't bank on it. Another thing to recognize is this. We're not recommending some slight rule changes to the current game. We're saying, actually, stop this game, leave this arena, march across the road, enter this arena, and start a whole new game. That is what we're recommending. And so for both men and women, Stop listening to voices, whether they're in your life or online, who disparage marriage, who attack the other gender, who say that commitment is wrong, who talk down on being a husband or a wife, on being a father, on being a mother, on having a family, on the next generation. Turn those voices off. If voices are saying, hey, you should date for years, you shouldn't be intentional, you shouldn't move towards covenant quickly, turn those voices off. You want to make sure that the voices that you're listening to are men and women in your life who love the Lord, who are healthy individuals, who have an understanding of the importance of relationships, of covenant, and of marriage and family, and invite them to speak into your life and to provide direction when it comes to your pursuit of a romantic relationship. Obviously, there's a lot more we could cover here. As always, we like to just kind of pop the can, let the worms out, and then conclude. So we look forward to having you here next time on the Art of Pursuit podcast.